start winging it, talking about Revizto, and I was ready to buy Revizto right there, and he did a fantastic job. Adam Sheather, he's also one of those over there, fantastic speakers. He's a marathon man, and Arman, who I also have seen several times introduce Revizto. So you're in good hands. Please welcome them.
How's it going? So just a couple of quick things. Thank you, Jose. I'm Aaron Mallor. Adam is going to be coming up in a little bit. We're going to kind of divide the class up into different things you can use Revizto for. There are certain things we've been using it for, and there are certain things Adam's using it for. So we're going to kind of hand off different parts of the presentation. We're going to start in Revit before we get into Revizto. As Jose was saying, I did speak last year about the fact that Revizto has changed a lot about what we do inside our Revit models, but a big portion of how the models look in Revizto is actually things that we've done inside Revit to make them look good in Revizto. We basically went back to a lot of our content library and redid a lot of stuff based on wanting them to look great in Revizto. So then we'll go through the actual workflow to take one of our models and get it into Revizto. And then we're going to switch it off, and Adam's going to show us some awesome things that he's been doing with issue tracking in Revizto. So we will kick that off. We're not at questions yet. That's for later. Sorry. So I went ahead and opened this model because was anybody here at DCS before RTC, the Content Summit? Okay, a bunch of you were here. So we had a lot of little breakout sessions where we discussed various aspects of content, and the conversation gets a little more interesting when you start talking about wanting to walk around in real time, because there's something that a lot of people are always worried about with content, and that's over-modeling. But I can tell you that specifically with Revizto and any software that you're going to use for walking around in real time, suddenly over-modeling actually pays a few dividends. I'm going to show you a quick demo before we actually get into the different things we've done in this model. There are a couple of points that I want to make though. I don't believe in dog and pony shows, so I have to give credit to the team at Beck that did this. This is an actual active healthcare project that was done by a few of our architectural interns and a few of our interior designers. It's very important to mention that I have not done a single thing in this model besides build some of their content. I did not do any of their material editing. I did not do this model in Revizto. I did not build this model at all. This was done by people who've been using Revit for less than a couple of years. So when we started using Revizto, the goal was to replace SketchUp with something that would allow us to show the client what the actual project would look like when it was built. We wanted to replace, it looks different. Oh, okay, because that's right in the background. We wanted to replace an old workflow that we had of, unfortunately, exporting a model from Revit into SketchUp just for the ease of navigating around and getting perspective. An architectural intern came up and they said, Aaron, I really don't want to kick this thing out to DWG and have to rematerialize it. Is there anything out there we could look at? We came across Revizto, and this was now the third project that we've done. The first one that we did looked drastically different, and that was because a lot of things like wall protection and like office equipment was modeled in such a way that our documents looked great and the model looked pretty close. But now that you can walk around in real time, suddenly you want the model to look as great as the documents do. And that meant a lot of interesting things. And by the way, some housekeeping. I am aware the handout and the data set are not uploaded. They will be. If you've been in my other classes, you know that this is an ongoing theme. So you will get some interesting pieces of content from this model so you can experiment with them in Revizto. So we're going to just jump right in. I'm going to kick this model up to fine level of detail, which we basically only use for exporting the model to Revizto, and I'm keeping a timer so we have time to do the Revizto stuff. After about 15 minutes, I'll stop moving off in Revit. I think this actual example came up in BCS, and I think we all had a laugh because everybody else was saying, "Oh, what about those people who model all their keys on their keyboards? They don't know what they're doing." Uh-oh. It's an old laptop. Give it a minute. Give it a minute. Come on. That's better. So yeah, a lot of people think it's crazy, that the phones and the keyboards all have that level of detail on them, as does the medical equipment, as do the televisions. But I'll tell you what, when you want to walk around in real time, it actually makes a lot of difference. I'll tell you that I believe, and I don't have any actual empirical data to back this up, but I believe that I've found some differences in how we can build content and actually still make the models function. We were having a conversation between 4 and 4:15, because that's when I thought the class started. This model's gigantic. It's at about 850 megs right now, and that's because I detached it from Central to come here. It's 1.2 gigabytes in the office. Runs like a champ. It's a 3-year-old laptop. And our average workstation is a crummy $1,600 Dell computer. We are using level of detail to mitigate how this file performs, except we don't build in redundant levels of detail. We only subtract things. So fine level of detail, there's a whole bunch of keys in the keyboard. Medium level of detail, the keys are missing. But we use medium level of detail for just about everything. Most of our construction document views are all at medium level of detail. We only use fine level of detail for doing things like exporting to Revizto or exporting for renderings and whatnot. So that was item number 1. They still perform fine. I mean, like I said, this is how it's performing right now, while I have 2 sessions of Revizto and the entire model loaded, and it is completely tolerable, and I have to give a lot of credit to the fact that the last couple of versions of Revit have gotten what I like to call stupid fast by comparison. This model started at 14 and it dragged, but it's a lot better now. So, I mean, yeah, the first thing that we do in terms of wanting these models to look great in Revizto is we do tend to model in obscene level of detail. The outlets are particularly funny, not the ones that are on the wrong set missing, but if I can find some that are actually there. Let's see here.
Next time I'll clean up my work sets before I come to RTC.
There we go, it's bound to be something in this room. Really? Oh, nuts. They're off. Take it back, they're probably on the right work set. Yeah, it's a little over the top. The outlets have holes in them, the computers have keys on them, the phones have buttons on them, the card readers have lights on them, because it's just a little added benefit when you want to go walking around. So, I mean, that was the first thing I would say, is a lot of our content definitely changed when we started doing real-time walkthroughs. As an aside of that, there is an interesting trick that Scott's here, right? I just saw him a minute ago. There he is. Scott Brown, who works at Beck, is about 155 times better at materials and rendering than I am. I'm actually not that good at it. But there are some tricks that Scott was able to impart on me that have made the walkthroughs in Revizto rather interesting. And there are times that you want to map complex images onto Revit materials. But a brick is much easier, right? Because you've got a pattern that's on the modeled object, and then you've got a JPEG that matches the pattern, and you just align them, and that's very easy because it's brick. But a TV screen, you don't have any patterns on the family, right? So what we've got in the habit of doing, and unfortunately you won't be able to see it because we're not in the office, and I don't have the material editor, or I don't have the actual JPEG here. But what we've done is, you can take a material that you want to put on the TV screen, and you can do this for really anything. All I've started doing is, if I have a TV screen that is like 47 inches, I put a surface pattern on it that's just a single horizontal line and a single diagonal line, and we do it in such a way that, where is it here? This is a 24-inch screen. So there is a surface pattern called 24-inch screen, and the only reason you need the surface pattern is if you've worked in software like 3D Studio Max and then you've come to Revit, you've realized you can't adjust UVW mapping in Revit, right? So you can't move your materials around. But you can, as long as you do it by using the texture mapping between the surface pattern and the JPEG. So if you've got a brick pattern, and then you've got a brick JPEG, and it's not showing correctly in the renderings, you go in and adjust the texture mapping, right? And I don't think, I can't do it, maybe I can. I shouldn't let me do it because I don't have the image. But the act of nudging the surface pattern up and down will basically slowly shift all the images on the TVs up and down until you get them in the right spot. So as BIM managers, or the people implementing this technology, if you actually just spend an hour or two and make 24-inch TV, 27-inch TV, 30-inch TV, 32-inch TV, 34-inch TV, all the way up, nobody in your office ever has to do it. It's a statement of fact that now look back, anybody that drags a TV into a project can shove it into Revizto, and there's Apple TV on it. I don't have Apple TV though, so I don't really get the appeal. But so it's just kind of a neat thing that we can do with the materials to really make the rendering start to pop. So we had to do a few other things to this model to get it to look the way we wanted it to look, and then we'll jump into the Revizto workflow. Let's see here. Wall protection in a hospital is always pretty interesting, and there are a lot of different ways you can model wall protection. There's Revit railings, there's adaptive components, there's wall sweeps, but what we were after, should go to the right floor. These are very clunky families. You'll get a couple of these in the data sets, which are pretty interesting to play with. You'll get one straight one and one curved one, which is really kind of bizarre. We wanted to have a family, and this is where Revizto changed things, that actually properly returned as the wall protection was going to return and leave the 3-inch gaps at the other end of the wall. Now, prior to Revizto, we never bothered with this because we had the graphics showing wall protection aid going from one end of the wall to the other, and it's in the specs that everywhere the wall protection ends, it comes in 3 inches short. But suddenly, with the ability to walk in real time, we really wanted to show that off. So these wall protection families, instead of using Revit railings or something, they're actually just a series of very simple line-based families that have some complex mitering in them at the ends. So the interior designers come in and they drag the line from door frame to door frame, and it has that parameter set for the offset, and it returns the profile of the wall protection, and it annotates itself. And this is great because, like I said before, the first time we did one of these walkthroughs, this looked a lot different. You couldn't see the individual posts and rails, and they just looked straight. And the client was actually a little put off by how different it looked. So a couple other kind of interesting things is in a lot of our projects we do stuff like this where we have film on walls that you can see through, especially in like our women and children's patient towers. We do a lot of ornate designs on the wall. And so some folks had asked how should they go about doing that in the model, not in the monitor family. Sorry. And I believe they're still in there. I need to check because unfortunately in the design they did get removed later. I keep them in Revizto because they look better. Let's see if I can find them real quick. So what we made was a simple series of generic model families that are face-based in nature, and they are just flat extrusions with parameters on them, instance parameters, so that you can apply film on everything. I know there are a lot of different ways to do film. You know what, can we just type in film and find it? It's pretty horrible because I don't know what it's named and built it. Wall cover? I don't think that's it, but we'll try it. Yep. No, that's not it. Okay, I'm gonna leave that alone. Anyways, it's a generic model family in the data set that you can just plop on the glass and then stretch it out. The reason this is great is a lot of the ways we try to do it with Revit curtain wall, people start splitting pieces of glass up, and that's not really what it is, right? It's not like a different type of glass. Well, sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's glass and it's something that gets applied to it. And doing that with families works out a lot better because then you've got a whole separate object that you can manage that's got the film on it versus the glazing. So that was kind of something that gave us that effect when we wanted to walk around in Revizto and see the doors like that. Only 2 more things in Revit that I'll cover before we start actually working on the Revizto workflow. I love having the ability to walk around through the building, and Revizto will let you walk through doors, but it is pretty nice if you can actually open the doors before you go into Revizto. So recognizing that we were going to start wanting to do real-time walkthroughs, one of the things that we did is we retrofitted the entire door library so that every door that we have can now be opened. They can be opened and they can be partially opened, and that's just a product of the different door styles. So swing doors give you angles, so you can put the panels at 45, you can put them at 90. Sliding doors give you percentages for how far open they are. I think when I got to the sectional garage door, I gave up and I just said it's open or it's closed. Because I'm trying to figure out how to get it to roll. I know Marcelo can do it, but I can't. Didn't he make like a Star Wars thing walk this week or something? Okay, well, and what's that? 7. Nice. Okay, well I submitted. If he wants to make it walk in Revizto, that'd be awesome. But it really gives something extra there to not have to walk through the doors. It's pretty great that when you're in here, doors are the one thing that you can walk through, so that if you want to get into a space, you can do that. But it's just kind of weird when the clients are around. You're like, hang on, we're going to bust into this room. So aside from that, a couple of the things that we did that really helped. Revizto actually has its own set of tools for changing lights and changing materials, but I want to really stress that this was not a massive post-production effort. The team built this Revit model for their documents, and when they needed to make many presentations to the clients, they hit the export to Revizto button, they hit the bake in the lights button, and they started walking, and that was the entire workflow. Lights were baked in, and they were walking to Revizto in under an hour and a half. And by the way, most of that hour and a half, they weren't doing anything. The lights were just baking in so that you could get that nice soft glow. They would actually export it to Revizto and walk instantly anytime they just wanted to check out the scene. Okay? So I encourage the team to do a lot of their material editing inside Revit and not to actually do it downstream, just because the more they do downstream, the more they have to keep making updates and changes later. So I will say, to date, I have kept a large library of light fixtures in Revit, but I haven't actually focused on the lighting values that are in those families because we haven't done an extensive amount of rendering with the light fixtures or using the light sources out of Revit. So this changed when we got into Revizto. And so one thing that I do recommend is somewhere in your office library, keep a schedule of light fixtures that is not itemized by instance, but that just lists all the types of the light fixtures and all of the intensities and color values of the light fixtures. Because for whatever reason, the family template that I used for my light fixtures had every light in the building at like 3,500 degrees, and it was like orange like an old school craftsman house, which was not the look they were going for in the hospital. So it's really great to just be able to go insert from file, insert views, go to your data set, which is not that folder, and then you have the schedule that's just called light fixtures for Revizto. And this is just a schedule that we made, and you'll see that all the initial color temperatures are there. Obviously you want to use, if you have them, the real values of the light fixtures. With being a hospital, we set most of them around 6,500 when we call it a day. This completely changes the way it feels in Revizto because the lights obviously look like a hospital. So here is the entire workflow for actually getting into Revizto. After that, you want to have a 3D view set up. I'll give you a hint, it's not this one. Because it is going to export whatever is in the view, and this view, having no ceilings and no roof, is not going to look that good in Revizto. So we, just like you would for Navisworks, or just like you would for DWF or FBX or any other kind of rendering, we actually set up individual 3D views made for exporting. So they've got one for when they want to render in Lumion, and then they've got several for when they want to export to Revizto. They've got the lobby, and they've got level 2. And so we'll go into that view. Now, what's really neat while we're waiting for this to open, it will export all of your linked models as well. So one time when they wanted to see how things really looked, we actually exported it with MEP and structure all turned on. You can see all the pipes and all the ducts anywhere that they're actually exposed. Most of the time, our use of Revizto is wanting to get in front of a client and show them something they can walk through. So here is our level 2 view. And the reason we have a different view, of course, is, like I said, it's actually going slightly from the middle of level 1 to slightly the middle of level 3. And that's because you want to have the ceilings and the roofs and everything enclosed. A little bit about that, like I was saying earlier, Revit model-wise, this thing is a giant, and we run on some fairly average, meaning that in a good way, hardware. We're not buying like $8 trillion computers with massive graphics cards. So I recommend that when you're setting up scenes in Revizto, you'll notice I'm only going to do one story of this building. One story of this building, which you saw the level of detail we had modeled, it will export to Revizto and it will walk through like butter, like it will be absolutely smooth. It's a little choppy when I'm presenting because I have Revizto and Revit all running at the same time on the projector. One story of the model this detailed, you can walk through it absolutely no problem. If you have a high-end GPU computer, I can tell you that we bought an Origin PC with dual 4 GB graphics cards, and I have exported this entire building and walked around it at full screen resolution, and it's really smooth. So if you have more of the gaming computers that are geared for this type of thing, you can export a truckload of stuff and walk around with it. So the workflow goes something like this. We're in our export view and we make sure everything that we want is visible for the export. And if you've installed Revizto, you've got an export to Revizto button that's on your add-ins ribbon. You only have 2 of them if you've got multiple versions of things installed, and that was the earlier class, so you missed that one already. So we're going to tell it to export to Revizto version 3. Maybe I shouldn't actually hit the button in the class. Let's see how long it's going to take. It's going to ask in a second for what project you want to assign it to. And it's pretty great, right? Because, so this project had, I think at one point there were 13 people working on this hospital. And so they had the model saved on the Revizto cloud. That way, depending on the day and who was working on it, any of the 13 could update the project in the cloud and then regenerate it for walkthrough. So I'm not actually going to hit this button, and the first reason is I'm not on the internet. Which will make this kind of funny. But you can basically choose a project, and so you'll see that I've got a few in there. Yeah, that's actually a project named In the House. I don't really know what that is. This project in particular was called, THHH Level 2. So if you select the project and then you hit OK, it will actually kick this thing into the Revizto Editor. Weighing whether or not I want to click this or not. Okay. You gonna go that fast? Old computer. We'll do it. We'll see what happens. So then there's two aspects of working in Revizto, right? There's the Revizto Editor, which is where you're going to set up your scene. And if you want to make any material or lighting changes, you're going to do that in the Revizto Editor. And then there's what's called publishing it to the viewer. And so after we have the whole scene set up in the editor, we will kick the model out to what we call the viewer environment. And that's this environment. Whoops, hello. Should I not have that open? Let's do it. We'll wait. Settle down. I think I'm the only computer in the world that when it goes not responding, it comes back. It's kind of cool like that. Yeah.
So in your light schedule, I didn't see a column for the photometry. Does this support photometry, or does it support IAS files for the light source?
IFC?
IAS.
No, we don't.
We don't? Okay.
We just made it simpler. Like we take IAS and convert it to a simpler cone light source.
Okay. Thanks.
I'm glad they were there to answer that because I didn't know the answer.
What is it, since we're waiting, what does it do with, like, if you have a curve light, where you have to emit light along the length, change that to one point light source, or will it?
Good question. We have.
It has those lights in it.
Okay.
This model. You can see. Whoops. That's it. I was just kidding. I closed it because it's exporting. This project actually has those. You may have noticed when I was walking around, there actually are no lights in the ceiling. That was part of the design. They kept the ceiling clean, and they went with stripped cove lights down both sides of the hallway. It does a fairly good job, and you guys helped me through adjusting the quality of the light maps when you're baking them in. Obviously, the higher you set the light map resolution, which I'll show in a minute, it does glow along the entire length of the cove. It does have slightly warmer spots, but I mean they do that in real life anyway, unless you go crazy with bulb staggering and all that stuff. So, any other questions while we're waiting? Questions about the Revit aspect of it so far?
You divide your families up. You got medium and fine. Are you just trying to? Do you want to match those to like LOD 200, 300? That way you kind of got this family that's kind of a do it all.
I really don't want to. This was. Were you at PCS the other day?
No.
Okay, so we had a great conversation at one of the breakout tables. Natasha and I were there, ready to go to war over it. LOD is like a weird thing, and you know what? I really wish somebody would have called it level of expectation instead of level of No, I mean it, because here's why. I think what you need to be doing with your LOD is you need to be telling people what they can do with the model at that point in time. The problem is now people have turned it into, like I love this diagram of the chair. Like the chair that starts out and it's a block, and then one day it's suddenly manifested into being filleted. It makes me want to, when I start a project, take all the fillets out of the chair. So I'm like, we don't really do that. You know, in SD, you throw in a ridiculously detailed chair. It might not be the right chair, and that's why we need to tell people the expectation is just that in SD, you don't pull the manufacturer name off the chair. You just say, chair. So I don't want to bring the families out, but the bigger reason is, and I want to say Helen coins the term, Helen, Karina from Perkins and Will at BCS. What did she call it? A non-destructive replacement or something? And what she was getting at was, we put content in at SD, and take Revit out of the equation, take the hosting and all that stuff. 90% of the time, you have to swap one object with another, something doesn't correlate. You know, it's got a different reference plane as the origin, it moves 3 feet, it's annoying. So I'd rather just simplify everybody's user experience and have the model be overdone if it means not having to fight with it when they get further downstream. So that sounds very backwards to a lot of people, but basically, if you were to go into the content library that we have, you can see some of it over there. They don't have different families for different phases. They don't have different families for different levels of detail. We don't have separate families for rendering versus for production. It's just like throw it in there and that's what it is. And if it's the wrong family because it's the wrong manufacturer or something, later we'll have to swap it out. Hopefully that makes sense. And that's totally just my opinion. That doesn't mean it's a good idea.
So you're all about super models?
I'm all about super models, not super families. No one's taking this out of context. I'm waiting for Twitter to start lighting up in my pocket. You know, it's funny, there are all these white papers out there about model performance and technical performance, and the tough thing about those white papers is they're always written on the basis of trying to make your computer perform better. I don't care how my computer performs, I care how my project performs. And I mean, you know, it's like they tell you all these things like, well, don't put voids in families and don't use parameters. Well, okay, but a void in a family actually helps my architecture team do a better job documenting something. It makes my computer run slightly slower, but why do I care if my computer runs slower if getting a benefit from it? Now, if it tanks, that's kind of different. But what is still done?
Loading your materials.
Yeah. You have to give it kind of a pass on this. It is a giant model, and it's got a lot of stuff to get through.
Well, that's a good point. If it's trying to get materials right now, it's going to miss a lot, right?
Oh yeah. This is not going to thank you, Scott. This is not going to look correct. I'm not at the office, and we use a networked material library with networked render appearance paths. So it's not, none of the stuff that you saw in the fully baked version is going to be here right now. So we get into the Revizto editor, and it's important to explain that the editor is not the viewer. This is not the scene where you like go fast and do all the great stuff. You can move in here, and the goal in here is to basically set up the scene where you want to be standing, which is not floating outside the building. So I'm going to maneuver, and this is great if any of you are gamers. It uses WASD controls. You can also scroll wheel like you can in Navisworks or in, what's that other software I can't stand? Oh, SketchUp. And in the later versions of Revizto, they've been really great about including all of the different control methods. So you can control it like Revit, or you can control it like SketchUp, or like
Navisworks walk mode is wrong.
Navisworks walk mode is wrong?
Yeah.
Okay.
As well.
Oh, you can use it, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm like, it's wrong. I'm like, well, I don't disagree with you. I don't want to fight with
Navisworks walk mode, man.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just setting up where I want the scene to start. And the reason why is when you bake this into the viewer, you'll be standing wherever you've arranged it. And so like I said, it moves much slower in the editor, but that's because this is where you do the editing and not the actual walking. So I'm going to just say we start right here. You'll notice the door's closed, because the door's closed right now in the model, so that kind of makes sense. Now in here, there's a bunch of stuff that you can change. You can, so it's actually new in 3 point whatever, something, in 3 point whatever. It's now new that you can merge scenes together, which is really cool. Because like I showed you, we have the lobby scene and we have level 2, and they're completely different. So if you wanted to, you know, we keep all of our different floors as separate scenes just because there's not really a benefit to walking up the staircase. But if you wanted to, you could merge them all back together and you could have all of it together. So you can do that. Now, clicking review will actually then kick this into the viewer mode, which is where you get to walk through and have it be like real-time kind of speed. I'm going to flip to viewer mode in a minute. I'm not going to push this one out because obviously this is missing a lot of the materials. Then you can also sync it to the cloud or to, is it the same sync button for when it's on your network?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can also, this is cool. This is one of the things I'm most excited about. In the newer version, instead of syncing it up to the cloud, you can actually just sync it on your office network. And that's great if you're like some places that I've been where you've got great network speed, but you don't have great internet speed. Because if you've got 6 people in the same building syncing updates to it, they don't have to push it, which is great.
And when you do that, you can actually store your model in your local network, but still use our